There's no defense for it. It's not my fault, and that's true. But porn, I think, tends to be more of a symptom of other problems in the marriage than it is some isolated horrible event for most guys. I think most guys, if you're in a marriage and you have a loving, respectful, passionate relationship with your wife, you are, I wouldn't say immune from it, but you are much less likely to fall into that than if you are in a situation where you're feeling down, you're feeling disrespected, you're depressed about your situation, maybe you're fighting, things like that. This is not an excuse for the men that do that, but it's an acknowledgement that the circumstances going on in the marriage are going to have a huge, huge impact on that. Welcome back, everyone. Craig here. So no Jonah. I'm not sure what happened to Jonah this morning. If he forgot, overslept. We did get some snow here, so maybe that interfered with it, and maybe he'll show up during this. But I wanted to make sure I had a chance to record this before Thanksgiving in case it doesn't work out for us to get together. So today I wanted to talk about two topics specifically. The first is the I guess for lack of a better word, the Lila Rose controversy with Pearl. Maybe you haven't heard of it if you're not on Twitter, but I'm going to talk about that. And then second of all, if I get a chance to, I'm going to play for you part of Christopher West's most recent podcast to react to that. So stay tuned to that. That'll probably come towards the end. So first of all, I want to address the Lila Rose controversy. So Lila Rose... I know of her. I think she's fairly certain she's Catholic, quote unquote Catholic influencer. I don't know if she started out in the kind of the pro-life advocacy space and maybe still is in that. But she was on Pearl's podcast or vice versa. I don't remember which is which. Pearl, if you don't know, is sort of a, what's the best word to describe her? She's kind of an antagonizer. I think she describes herself as Catholic or former Catholic and is sort of a red-pilled female type influencer. Spends all her time bashing women, basically, and standing up for men. At least that's what she claims she's doing. But more or less promotes, pretty much advocates kind of a lot of ideas that are contrary to any kind of conservative Catholic perspective on love and marriage and sex, but does make some points sometimes, maybe for the wrong reasons, but makes some good points, I think, sometimes. So she points out some real problems, I think, in some sort of the traditional Christian/Catholic structures when it comes to morals and marriage and relationships. But anyway, those two were on, and I have actually not watched more than just a few clips of it, so I apologize if I'm misstating or misrepresenting things, but it caused a lot of interesting observations and comments in the quote unquote Twitter space. I want to kind of share the reactions I saw, that I want to talk a little bit about my own personal observations. So first of all, she's not a traditional Catholic, although I think she's probably a conservative Catholic. And, you know, a lot of the red-pilled young men type things that Pearl attracts were, but let me back up a little bit. So the discussion came up about porn, and the issue, Lila Rose, maybe not surprisingly, was condemning porn, telling men not to use it. It's harmful to your marriage. It's a grave sin, you know, the normal stuff, right? I don't know Pearl's whole what Pearl's whole arguments were. I mean, I don't think she sees anything wrong with porn, or at least she sort of defends men for doing it, kind of blames the women for causing it, I think is more or less Pearl's position. And so the red-pilled men came out in sort of attacking Lila Rose and blaming women for the fact that men use porn, and then, you know, accusing women of being no better because they, I don't know, supposedly read their smut novels and things like that. I don't know what the numbers are on that. I don't think that's necessarily true from my little circle, but I guess I don't want to talk to women too much about that. So Lila Rose got, I guess, a lot of attacks from the kind of that red-pilled movement of men and women that sort of, you know, align with Pearl. But what I thought was even more interesting was the weird opposition that Lila got from the trads, both trad Catholics and trad evangelical Protestants. And their big thing, well, there was kind of twofold. Number one, and this is just so weird to me, they because I don't think they disagree with her in substance, and I think most of them actually kind of acknowledge that, but they're like, it's not a woman's place to lecture a man. Like, okay, that whole patriarchy submission thing, I mean, she's not preaching in church, for crying out loud. She's giving her opinions on something that obviously affects men and women. But no, you know, she's a woman. It's not her place to lecture men on a man's problem, which is just complete nonsense. I mean, just say it for what it is. It's whether you agree with her or not. And I have my own thoughts on what she said, but whether you agree with her or not, can we stop living in the Middle Ages where women are like literally not allowed to say anything? But that's just modern Catholic tradition, you know, American Catholic traditionalism right there, you know, missing the whole point, really. So that was number one. And number two, and this actually kind of made me laugh a little more, is some of the kind of trad Catholic influencers. I'm not going to name any names, but that really claim to be the man's man and teaching men how to be masculine and how to, you know, overcome all those horrible, you know, evil habits of the flesh or whatever, say that it may be a near occasion of sin for men to even see a woman use the word porn on social media. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, if you guys are really that set off, maybe you ought to just step back and evaluate things. Maybe you should just get off Twitter and social media together. If you literally can't, I mean, are they not triggered if a man uses the word? I don't understand the argument, but there was like, this wasn't some minor account. And I just like, oh my gosh, like just the word porn. Apparently not even, you know, coming out of the mouth of a woman, they're like, oh, it's indecent of her as a married woman to even use that word outside of talking to her husband and maybe her children. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, you guys, you are totally missing the forest for the trees here. But that was the trad response. They're like, so anyway, so that, which I just thought was so silly because we're just fighting over, I think silly things when they missed an opportunity to address what I think is a really important issue here. Because the third reaction, the third main group of people that reacted to Lila Rose were wives. Let's say conservative wives, whether it's Catholic or non-Catholic, came out in full support her comments, and were basically, depending on who spoke, were of various levels of vigor when it comes to chastising men, especially husbands, that may at some point in time find themselves struggling with this issue, whether it's a true addiction or just occasional use. They had they minced no words for how horrible that was and how ashamed he should be and how, equating that with infidelity and, making it look like it's no different than going out and having an affair or something like that. So let me just say this. I'm not here to minimize the issue of porn. I'm not here to say it's not as sinful. I think it is bad. I think it is sinful. I think it is harmful to the man. Typically, this is a man's issue, but it's harmful to the person using it. And harmful to the marriage, I think, can be. I don't think it necessarily follows that it always is. I think someone that is truly addicted to it is going to have some real physiological and emotional and mental negative effects that are going to carry over into the marriage. I don't think that's really up for debate. I think it is debatable. Setting aside the issue of whether it's sinful or not, I think it's open for debate that any use of porn is going to necessarily create some lasting harmful effects on the user, and especially if the other spouse is unaware of it. But I'm not really I don't really want to fight about that issue, but I just want to make those kinds of distinctions here today. But, and this has always been the challenge of talking about this delicate issue, and to some lesser extent the solo issue, but they tend to go hand in hand. And here's my theory. And there's lots of layers here, because there are, my generation exposure to this is much different, from when I was a kid, when we didn't even have the internet. If you stumbled upon this, it was you found someone's dirty magazine somewhere, right? Now it's just literally available on your fingertips in any phone, right? So more and more people, especially young men, are growing up exposed to this, and I think if you get exposed to it at a young age, it's very easy to become addicted to it. That would be my assumption. And so a lot of men are coming into the marriage with a history of it at some point. I mean, I would think it is exceedingly rare for any man in this day and age, let's say he's in his 20s, to enter marriage without ever having observed it at all. And it could be completely unintentional. Maybe you're at a friend's house or something, you're watching a movie you're not expecting. And I think it's really hard to go through life in the modern age without having been exposed to it to some degree. And I would say it's exceedingly rare for this generation to go into marriage without having had some actual problems with it. Maybe in terms of like repeated use and in the inability to control the usage when you wanted to or needed to. So that is certainly different from when I grew up, and I think that kind of needs to be treated in its own way. But what I do want to say about that is there's this fine line between condemning that and, let's say, wives being offended if their husbands do that and have an addiction, because it is going to harm them. I think it's going to cause problems. But at the same time, that just goes right into the issue of culpability and fault, I think. I don't know how it can't. So what you do and how you're supposed to help your husband. I mean, because I think there is this huge misconception that marriage is a cure for that. It's not, and in some people, I think it makes it worse. And I think you could certainly have men that, let's say, made it through their married lives without really falling into it, find themselves falling into it when the reality of life and marriage sets in, especially if you're, having to abstain for any length of time for one reason or another. So, but lost in this is this, because it's sort of like, let me just step back a little bit. Let's talk about the topic of drunk driving, right? People are rightly outraged by drunk driving, and it causes, horrible carnage. If someone gets in a crash and kills someone. And so you have this understandable, almost universal societal negative reaction to it. But there is nuance in there, right? There is, that doesn't mean that we ban alcohol or put someone away for life that does that, right? We don't take all steps to stop using it, and we recognize that some people have substance abuse issues, and that can impair their culpability. But there isn't really a place for people to come up and stand up for the drunk drivers, right? and not just provide a full defense to them, but just offer nuance, right? To offer to defend their humanity, that person's future, ability to recover and whatever. And it feels a little bit like that in this space, because there doesn't seem to be, for those that on Lila Rose's side, especially the females, there doesn't seem to be anyone in that side, very few people on that side asking the women to consider some of the nuances to this, because it's just like, oh, porn is evil, porn is grave matter, there's no defense for it, it's not my fault, and that's true. But porn, I think, tends to be more of a symptom of other problems in the marriage than it is some isolated horrible event for most guys. I think most guys, if you're in a marriage and you have a good, loving, respectful, passionate relationship with your wife, you are, I wouldn't say immune from it, but you are much less likely to fall into that than if you are in a situation where you're feeling down, you're feeling disrespected, you're depressed about your situation, maybe you're fighting, things like that. This is not an excuse for the men that do that, but it's an acknowledgement that the circumstances going on in the marriage are going to have a huge impact on that. And my own personal feeling is that, talking to guys that struggle with this, most of them, I believe, go there because they're searching for the feeling of being wanted. They want the desire, they want to experience being desired, and the idea of pleasing a woman. And let's just be real blunt and simple here. I think for Catholic guys, probably at least, but maybe not for just Catholic guys, if they're in a position where they're resorting to solo for one reason or another, they're probably looking for a nice, happy storyline to play over in their heads while they're doing that. And if they're in a rough patch of their marriage, they may have a difficult time conjuring up a happy scene that involves their spouse. Okay? I hope that doesn't offend people, and I hope, don't take it the wrong way. I'm just diagnosing the problem, not passing judgment. But if he is, the old country song, maybe most people here probably don't know it. It's hard to kiss the lips at night that chew your ass out all day long. sorry for the, but it's sort of like that. It's sort of like, I suspect that guys that are going to that, if they're not able to have a convincing imaginary interaction with their wife, are probably attracted to the porn because the participants in that on camera seem excited and passionate and wanting you and pleased and all that. Something that they may not be able to play out in their mind with their spouse. Okay. Again, this is not a defense to that. This is not an excuse. I'm just trying to lay out in I think accurate terms what's going on. And so you have that going on. And let's say the guy is struggling with that and is feeling guilty and ashamed like he should, but also is trying to find tools to get out of that. Can he turn to his wife and share that struggle with her? And what's going to be the reaction? I think that is the biggest concern I have with the Lila Rose posture. Is I think they create this situation where wives, because I don't think most wives struggle with this, maybe at all, right? It's not something they can relate to. And so they can't even wrap their head around why any man would struggle with this other than he's just a complete perv, right? And some guys are, but I think most guys are not. I think most guys are just good, genuine guys struggling with these complicated bodies that we have in a complicated dynamic such as marriage. And so if the man cannot share these struggles or confess his past faults with his wife without being, having her look at him as if he had just gone down to the local motel and had a fling with some tramp, right? If in her mind those are the same things, he's not going to tell her about that, right? And he's not even going to probably be able to tell her or talk about things that maybe could help avoid that. If he feels disrespected, can he tell her he feels disrespected? If he feels like she doesn't look at him with longing at all, can he tell her that? If he can't, he's not going to. And so the circumstances that are contributing to this are going to continue, and he's going to continue to struggle with that. That's just the reality of it. And I don't know that there's a great solution to the problem other than it is so important for husbands and wives to be able to embrace and support each other's fallen humanity. And our fallen humanities are different. Men and women are different. Let me give you an example. So, for me as a guy who's been married for 20 some years, marriage has its ups and downs, and anyone that's listened to this podcast knows that. And I'm in a much better place than I have been for much of my marriage, but it's still a struggle, and it's still different days are different. I struggle with these same urges and temptations that any guy does, I think. But what I can say from experience is my ability to resist those improper urges or those improper desires or do those improper things is much, much easier when my wife and I have a good relationship. Not just are we intimate, but do I feel respected? Do I feel like I can trust her with my own struggles and thoughts, and vice versa? When we have been off, when I felt like I couldn't open up to her, that is when those temptations are the strongest. And that's when most of the time that's when I'm going to fall into those different types of issues. And so that's why it's just so important that couples understand each other and that women understand what's going on for men, because most women don't struggle with this. But let me talk about the woman's perspective just a little bit as best I can. When my wife and I are going through these struggles, that is my battle, right? That is the battle that I fight during the loneliness. But for my wife, that doesn't tend to be her thing. She doesn't feel the desire or the temptation to go pick up a romance novel. For her, it tends to be one of two things. It might be sitting down and having a big bowl of ice cream that she wouldn't otherwise have, right? But probably more than anything else, what I see happen is she kind of holds that inside and then it just comes out. Joan has coined the term frustration, and I think there's some truth to that. It just kind of all comes out, and I hear about things that I've been chewed out for before that I thought we had moved past, but apparently not. And things will come out of a beautiful woman's mouth that are pretty dang hurtful under those circumstances. And I try to remember this is not her speaking. This is her dealing with things inside of her that make her feel lonely or disrespected or unloved. And that I should not take personally some of the pretty crappy things that come out. That's not my battle. Even in the most difficult of fights that we've had, I'm a pretty restrained person, and I'm able to keep inside even some of the things I'm thinking, because that's just not. I don't have that problem, and in part of my mind, I would be afraid to say some of those things because I would not want to hurt her. That's just, she doesn't have the same perspective. Okay. And so, again, this is not bashing women. This is not defending men. This is just, I think, stating some pretty straightforward observations about differences between men and women. And so here's what I would say. I think men need to own this issue. Men need to fight this issue. Men need to be faithful to their wives. Men need to open up to their wives. But I also think it needs to be a two-way street. Wives need to open up to their husbands and need to understand that if you could relate to that at all, if you have ever just blown up at your husband and said some things that you would normally not say, he probably still remembers those things, and those probably hurt him. And have you apologized to him? Have you taken responsibility for him? Have you started to work through those things before they reach a boiling point? Like, I think these are some of the examples of how these dynamics play out in marriage. And that's really all I wanted to talk about. That's the only thing I really wanted to push back on Lila is if you just take her without kind of picture, considering the full picture, because when I've tried to make these nuances, I get accused of defending men and blaming the women, and I'm not, okay? But I got blocked. I mean, I literally got blocked by good Catholic women on Twitter for simply pointing this out. And that's fine. That's their prerogative, but I was pretty respectful about it. But if that's their attitude, if that's their response, that if a man even mentions these things, if she takes that as blaming her and he's just making excuses for himself, I'm sorry, but your husband is never going to come to you and open up to you about these things. He's not going to. And he probably struggles with this like most other guys do at some point in time. And I just think that's so sad, because it's just really sad, because we're all broken, and I think most of us always still love our spouses, want to love our spouses, love our marriages, But you can get into this point where you just feel like you're trapped. And I think the porn issue is especially one that can just really alienate men and women, because men deal with the shame, deal with this, at times, feeling of inability to overcome this, and have no one to turn to but their priest, and maybe friends like me if you happen to have them, right? So that's just all I wanted to talk about, and I'm sure I'm going to get a whole bunch of angry comments here, and I guess it is what it is. But before you do that, just stop and think about this, and maybe talk to your husband about it. Now he may deny it. if he doesn't feel like he truly can trust that if he's honest with you, you're not going to, if he can't drop that, if he can't show that to you or tell you that without being extremely judged and whatever, he's not going to. So I think if you want to have that conversation, you need to make it clear that he can say you just want the truth, and whatever the truth is, you guys will deal with that together as a couple. So that's my encouragement to people. And it's also my encouragement to wives. If you're married to a man that, if you figured out, either you caught him or revealed to you that he's had these struggles before, please just understand that doesn't make him a bad man. He's probably a good man that struggles with bad things. And I hope you can consider that and give him some room and give him some support, and see if together you guys can identify some ways to overcome that. So anyway, I hope that made sense. And if people have strong feelings one way or another, let me know in the comments. If you're on either side of this, either your husband or your wife that has, had this issue affect yourself or your marriage, and you need someone to talk to, just send me an email, unchartedcatholicman@gmail.com. If you'd like to get into our Discord community, feel free to do that as well. Just send me an email. We have men and women in there, getting more women in there, which I think is great. So I'm especially if you're a wife that is struggling with how to deal with this, if your husband has had this issue in the past or is ongoing issue, join our Discord community. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to support you and maybe help you find solutions to that and other challenges that we have as married people. So let me see here. So I'm about at the 30-minute mark. I promised you I'd do Christopher West, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm not sure I'm going to do the whole thing. I'll put a link to the Christopher West episode in the show notes if I remember. But this was his most recent podcast, and this was question. I can't remember if this is the first question or second question. I think this is the second question, so hopefully you can hear it.
Our next question is from a listener named Elizabeth.
Hello, Elizabeth.
My husband and I have been married 20 years with 4 kids.
Congratulations.
And have always used NFP. He is a practicing Catholic, but to be honest, he's not pursuing the Lord as much as I am.
I wish Jonah was here to react to this with me, so I'll do my best. So she said he is a practicing Catholic, but to be honest, he's not pursuing the Lord as much as I am. Huh? I mean, maybe that's true, but I can't help but see a sense of pride there. Better than thou. I mean, I think that's a kind of an odd way to talk about your husband, because or yourself. I'm not sure if that says more about her view of herself versus her husband. But anyway, I'm going to continue on.
We've fallen into a pattern for the past few years where, during my fertile times, my husband will tempt me daily to be intimate with him. And though I resist for a few days, I usually cave one day a month. This leads... to intercourse, but with only me climaxing and not him.
It's just such strange. I mean, the situation here is certainly not unique among Catholics that are using NFP. But the whole thing that so apparently he is trying to tempt her or to initiate intimacy with her. And then she's blaming him because she gives in. But when they do it, he doesn't climax, which makes no sense to me at all. Like inside or outside. And so it's like, I'm so confused as to what's going on here, but I'm really confused as to, I mean, if this is actually what's happening. I mean, my theory is he's doing this and then he's finishing the job elsewhere. I mean, I know that's what Jonah would say too. That's my strong assumption. And I know of couples that's more or less what happens from the guy's perspective. Not necessarily that they're having intercourse, but they're doing other things, bringing her to climax, and then, but not him, which, again, any guy, setting aside the moral issue of that, the question about that, any guy that can do that for his wife has such level of control and discipline that I'd like to meet this guy, because I honestly didn't think it was really possible, because you would have blue balls or whatever. So the fact that, so why is he doing, so I'm trying to, why would he do that? Because she's making it out to be like he's in this for himself and that she's somehow the innocent victim, but she's the only one that really gets the prize here. And so why is he doing that? And if he is doing that, I mean, if he's just taking a shower and that's where things finish, okay, I guess I can kind of understand that. Which again is some of those weird things that we Catholics do, trying to like figure out a way to get through this labyrinth of rules that are very difficult and don't always make sense. So, but yet he's going through that and he's missing out on the best part for him. She's getting that, and yet somehow she's mad at him for putting her through that. And now I don't know what he's doing. Now, is he just being affectionate to her? Because again, maybe he's decided, maybe he's come to his little conscience has told him, well, if we do it this way and then I go take care of him in the shower, it's okay. It's not as bad. Maybe that's what's going on. And so he is trying to push her into doing that. But it's just, I don't know. I would really like to get inside this guy's head and hear his side of the story. But I found the whole situation odd, especially where she is climaxing. So she's climaxing, she's clearly enjoying it. It's not like she's just a completely unwilling participant, reluctant participant. They do it and then he does, let's say he pulls the Onan special or something like that, and then she's just feeling like, I could see how she would feel used and abused in that situation, but that's not what's going on here. That's what I find so strange about this whole situation. But let's go on.
It is very difficult to stop after a certain point, and I'm always the one trying to stop it, which leaves... Well,
okay, at what point, where is she trying to stop it? Is she trying to stop anything from happening? Is she trying to stop it during it? Like, I still don't understand what she's trying to say here.
Me feeling guilty as a wife. While I love our intimacy, I resent my husband for repeatedly tempting me until I cave instead of exercising restraint.
Okay, so she resents her husband for tempting her, and she is mad that he doesn't exercise restraint. I mean, again, this guy is exercising restraint most of us don't have. assuming he's not going, I mean, even assuming he walks away and he takes care of it himself, that is quite a bit of restraint that most of us do not have. So I just think it's odd that she is blaming her for tempting him, and then also saying he doesn't have any restraint when I don't understand what he's getting out of this. But like if she's trying to paint him as the selfish one here, maybe he is. I don't understand what he's getting out of this. So that's why I'm just so confused, because it could be he feels like he's doing this as a favor to her. One of the most obvious criticisms that people have of NFP is that it doesn't allow women to enjoy sexual intimacy at that time of the month when they want it most, right? If you're trying to abstain, trying to avoid. I mean, is he trying to do that? Is he trying? I mean, she clearly is enjoying it. Is he? What are his motives here? Maybe he's trying to do something for her. Now, again, setting aside the morality of it, I just don't know that he's really actually being selfish here. And in fact, he may be doing something that he thinks is very loving for her, albeit maybe wrong. So I just think it's just so strange to me that she is, oh my gosh, it's so horrible. He's bringing me to climax and not having it himself. I'm just like, okay, whatever. Let's go on.
I once asked a priest in confession, as I have to confess this monthly, and he told me...
So they do this every month, and she has to confess it monthly, which most guys have to go to confession monthly for something.
...was a mortal sin. But I can't find that explanation anywhere. Can you shed some light on this?
So she's basically asking, I think, and this kind of gets to the question of other acts, although I don't consider this other acts in that it involves intercourse, but it involves climax on her part outside of his climax within the marital act. And so the priest had told her it's a mortal sin for her to do this willingly, I guess, or maybe even not unwillingly, because they're engaging in the marital act. She's experiencing climaxing, but he's not finishing. And she apparently went looking for the answer, and this is the gray area that Joan and I talk about. At least I think it's the gray area, because contraception is pretty clearly, I mean, whether you agree with it or not, the contraception issue is pretty well stated in Humani Vitae and the Catechism, stuff like that. We have 2352 on the topic of solo. But there's this gray area about, well, what about non-contraceptive sexual acts or non-intercourse sexual acts? It's at least gray. And that's kind of where she came from. So if you go back, and if I remember, I'll link to it below, like episode 164, 167, something like that. We had posed a very similar question to Christopher West, and he actually tried to answer on a show on other acts. And so this is similar to that. She's asking him, okay, help me understand why it's a mortal sin to do this for her, and for both of them, I guess.
Bless you, Elizabeth. Bless you. I just want to lift you up to the Lord's tender, merciful love. Obviously, in the church's teaching, terms like mortal sin have their place. These are important distinctions the church makes. And when the church says something is a mortal sin, it's saying it's serious matter and unconfessed. This is very dangerous for our souls, because it's a when it is serious matter, when it is freely chosen, and we know the reality of it, it cuts us off from the life of grace. That's what the church means by mortal sin. And yet, that phrase, mortal sin, it can be like, oh my gosh, I'm under God's wrath. I'm under his condemnation. Thank you, God, for his mercy. What we have is always, in every situation, the opportunity to repent. And I'm so glad you are going to confession regularly. And I'm so sorry that you are enduring this from your husband. It does not come from a place in his heart of love, of tenderness, of acceptance of your circumstances. It comes from a place of lack of self-mastery, lack of honoring the beauty and
Okay. Again, I don't know this guy. It is weird what he's doing here. I get that. And if she doesn't want to do this, I think he should respect that. But similar to what I was talking about the porn, like that's the common criticism. Well, you don't just accidentally do porn. Like you choose to do that. And I'm just like, well, you don't accidentally have sex with your husband. You choose to. Now, maybe you're feeling pressured or whatever. Okay, I just think we should just be even-handed about all this, because she really seems like she wants to give herself a pass here, wants to put all the blame on her husband. And again, he says this comes from a place of a lack of self-mastery. Again, I'm not convinced that's actually the case here. I don't know why this guy's doing that, but I don't see what he's getting out of it. Just from a perspective of him, if they're gonna say he's the selfish one, he's the abuser here, what is he actually getting out of this compared to what she's getting? He's giving her more than he's receiving, is all I will say about it. So that's why without hearing his side of the story, I'm just not ready to jump on the bandwagon of blaming the man, because let's be honest, the men usually get the blame for these kinds of things. We're the ones that have to exercise the self-mastery and self-restraint.
splendor and dignity of the marital act. Lack of honoring the mystery and beauty of fertility. And I'm so sorry you are enduring that. Your husband is in a painful place, because anyone who is not master of his desires is in pain.
Well, that may be true, but again, I don't know if he's not. I mean, if he's truly not master of his desires, and I think it also overlooks, being master of your desires causes pain as well.
The only path to real freedom, the only path to real love is to be master of our desires. The only path to authentic happiness is to be master of our desires. Right? The culture holds out a big...
Again, so he's blaming him for not being a master of desire, but apparently is just excusing her, who is also apparently not a master of her desires. She's not accusing him of forcibly doing this to her. I mean, it's up to her how much she wants to enjoy it, unless he's just really good at it. So it's just such a weird thing to basically just always put all the blame on the men, and to blame men. Any man that... This is one thing I want to say, and this is something I think Jonah 2.0 likes to harp on a lot, that, well, you got to carry your cross. Well, first of all, any couple, especially any man that is not using birth control, is carrying your cross. Using NFP and abstaining from the marital act for 10 to 14 days or more per month is a cross, regardless of whether you are doing other things in the meantime. Okay? So I think I just want to call bull crap on the idea that unless you are a complete, perfect monk, you are somehow not carrying a cross, or you're not slave. You are a slave to your desires. I think is complete and utter nonsense. I think any couple, especially any man, that goes through their marriage and doesn't use contraception, doesn't use porn, is faithful to his wife, is going through natural family planning, in and of himself is doing something I consider relatively heroic, and something that separates him from the vast majority of the population. And I'm not ready to just discount all of that and say, well, he's just a slave to his passions because he can't or doesn't take it the one step further and be complete master of his domain during those abstinence periods. The man that's in that situation, let's say, is engaging in solo or something in the meantime, that is his cross. That is a cross to him. Maybe it's not as big of a cross as just being, complete, cousins with your wife and not, doing things in the shower or whatever. But he's still that guy has a lot more self-restraint than most men do, and I think has much more self-restraint than Christopher West or this lady, I believe, are giving this man credit for. But that's just my personal feeling.
Fine about sexual freedom, but the culture does not know what true freedom is. In the culture, it means do whatever you want, whenever you want, without ever saying no.
Okay, so here again, I don't like it when Christopher West says, well, this guy is just doing whatever he wants, whenever you want, without saying no to yourself. He's already saying no to himself in many, many ways. He is saying no, let's say, to his primal desire to sleep with anyone he finds attractive, right? I don't think that really makes you much of a hero to be faithful to your wife, but you are saying no to some primal desire that you have. Call it concupiscence, call it what you want. If he's using NFP and is not pressuring his wife to go on the pill, or he's not sterilizing himself, or he's not using a condom, he is denying himself. He is not doing whatever he wants. What he wants is to have sex with his wife as much as he possibly can. That's what he wants. If he can have his way, that's what he's doing. He's not doing that, right? And even when they do get into the gray area, he's not even enjoying it himself. So this is just it. It's nonsense. Like what he's saying, his words are nonsense within the context of this situation, maybe not in general. And I don't like it when he does that, because it is just, if you are not perfect, you're just trash. If you are not 100% perfect, whatever, none of your efforts matter. And that is, I think, a problem. Again, I think it is kind of hearkening back to the discussion about the Lila Rose. If your man is faithful in all things but this sometimes, to just write him off as trash, as an unfaithful man, and to never consider all the things that he does every day, maybe they go kind of quiet and hidden, I just think is very unfair. And Christopher West, enable that. I think that enables that dangerous dynamic within marriages. That I think that's why I feel like I have to speak out about this. So let's go on.
It means don't ever master your desires. No. Sexual freedom is not the liberty to indulge my compulsions. It is liberation from my compulsion to indulge.
So again, I don't think freedom means you're either 100% or you're a slave. I think there is a continuum there.
Only such a person can be a free gift. Your husband has a compulsion here that he is not free from, and that ends up exactly where you are, in a place of real resentment, because you feel that lack of freedom on his part. And that's wounding to you, and it's wounding to him.
Christopher West is giving this wife bad advice, in my opinion. I think he is, if she listens to this and takes his words to heart without anything more, I think he is doing potentially real harm to this couple and to their marriage.
So, Elizabeth, let me try now to address the specific moral question you are asking.
Okay, so here he's going to, this is kind of why I wanted to play this. Let's hear Christopher West explain the immorality of what this couple is doing.
And in order to do that, I have to rewind here and talk about the purpose and the nature of sexual climax.
Okay, so what's the purpose of sexual climax? Not sexual intercourse, not the marital act, but sexual climax itself. This is going to be interesting.
Right. The purpose of sexual climax is, and here I want to speak specifically about male climax, then female climax.
spoiler alert, he never actually gets to female climax. He just talks about male climax and berates this man. So anyone that I encourage anyone to go ahead and like watch this, listen to it, because I listened to the whole thing, and I don't think he ever got to explaining the female climax, the purpose of it, or more importantly, why her side of this was immoral. He just berates the man for engaging in intercourse and not climaxing. That's essentially what he does.
The male climax is what consummates the marriage. So long as the male climax happens, I'm going to say this delicately, so that the male seed is planted in the garden. A seed expelled in any other manner does not consummate a marriage. Only that act by which the couples engage in the union that is per se designed by God for the generation of children, that is genital intercourse and the giving of seed, the seed planted in the garden, again, to put it delicately. This is what consummates the marriage, right? In times of abstinence, in times when a couple have a legitimate reason to avoid a pregnancy, there is nothing wrong with tenderness, with closeness, with affection, with nakedness, with intimate kisses and touches, so long as spouses know their limits and are not seeking climax apart from the act of intercourse. Now, in this...
So he is saying that the purpose of the male climax is consummation of the marriage, which doesn't talk about, I mean, he kind of weaves in the fertility part of it, but that, I don't know that the male orgasm is necessary. I don't think this is like church teaching, or I think he's just kind of making stuff up here. But I don't think that's accurate. I mean, I think the act of intercourse is what consummates the marriage. If someone has an answer to this, if there's something that says what actual consummation is, I'd like to hear it. I'm not sure that climax is actually necessary for the consummation of the marriage. And if it is climax but both sides necessary? And if not, why not both sides? Right? Why is it only him? And because, let's be honest here, in the vast majority of cases, if only one spouse is climaxing, it's the man. Very, very rare, I would say, is it that it's only the woman and not the man, unless he's got some sort of physical disability or something like that. It's not done for intentionally, like this guy apparently is. And so he says that's the purpose of the male climax, but the female is optional, right? I don't think anyone says you have not consummated your marriage until both of you climax together in the course of the marital act. And of course, what's weird is even Christopher West, or at least Theology of the Body people, think it's okay for the female climax to occur before, after, or both, or during the marital act. But the man's has to happen. This quote unquote seed in the garden is, of course, also kind of nonsensical. Like, I get he's trying to make the analogy, but the analogy is fatally flawed because sperm is not seed. The seed isn't a seed until it comes together. And then if you want to say planted in the garden, it's a fertilized egg gets planted in the uterus. But this whole idea of seed goes back to how they used to believe procreation happened, that the man actually was depositing a small human into his wife. That's why they often likened it to murder when you stop that from happening. But that's what he's saying, is that that's the purpose of the male climax. I think he's just making stuff up, right? And how many, you only need to consummate your marriage once. You're not really reconsummating it. And I think traditionally the purpose of ejaculation was procreation. Like, procreation is not the same thing as consummating the marriage. So it's just weird that that's the explanation that he gives for why the man must, if you're going to go through into the marital act, why the man must finish there. I understand the argument at least a little bit when you're talking about like the Onan situation where they have intercourse and then he finishes outside. That's the traditional way that this is criticized. But I've never heard it within the context where the man doesn't actually finish. And he goes on. I'm not going to play the rest of it, but you're welcome to do that if you want. But he then goes into this. I can't remember the name of. There's some French term for couples that would actually engage in intercourse, but neither one of them climaxes. And so the question is that moral? Now, first of all, I think that's a really almost impossible situation. But the question is, if a couple engaged in intercourse, are they required to finish? And he goes on to say that the popes have strongly discouraged it, but didn't come outright and condemn it. But like the fact that, and I think the reason that they criticize it is it's going to lead to, I don't know what's going to lead. Is it going to lead to? I mean, I guess what's most likely going to lead to is they finish and then they take care of business in the shower. So I suppose that's what they're trying to avoid. But this is the kind of neuroticism that just follows us around as Catholics. It's unavoidable. And I think that Christopher West, God bless him, I'm sure he's well-intentioned. He believes what he's doing, and he loves what he's doing, and all that. I don't think what he's saying is helpful, and in fact, I think it's probably causing more harm to marriage. It's causing more scruples than it's helping. Now, as I mentioned before, he never actually gets on to why it's sinful for her. I don't believe he does. Because that was kind of the genesis of her question. It was, well, I'm going to confession. The priest is telling me that I'm committing mortal sin. But he never answers why, because that was her concern. I guess what he did do is reassure her that it was right to be putting all the blame on her husband, and maybe her husband deserves all the blame. I don't know, but it left it kind of unanswered. Why? What's the purpose of the female climax, especially if, as TOB people say, it's fine for that to occur before, during, or after, all the above, as long as the actual marital act happens and the man puts his seed in the garden, right? I would like to see him explain the purpose of the female climax, which is, I think, optional under their standpoint. The male is not, apparently, because according to this, he must finish there. It's not optional for him. It is optional for her, but also if it happens, it can happen outside the marital act itself. He never answers that, and I'm guessing it's like me, you just forget, like you don't get to it. But I would like to hear him answer that, because I think that is actually the more serious question that that theology of the body, and let's just talk about theology of the body. I think the main glaring problem with the consistency of the theology of the body is it upholding these concepts, but also permitting the female orgasm outside of the actual act of intercourse, and yet other acts or solo acts for females is wrong. Like I think they're making a bunch of assumptions without showing their work, and maybe there is a logical framework here, but they just never haven't articulated. And that's what I would really actually like to see. I would like someone to follow up with him and have him very specifically answer the other half of this. How is what she's doing wrong? The only way I think you could argue that what she's doing is wrong is if, because she knows he's not going to finish and she does it, that I guess she's a participant in his sin. I don't see how she is sinning at all. They're not using contraception. Unless she's telling him, don't finish inside of me, which she probably would because they're trying to avoid. But I honestly don't understand why what she is doing is sinful here. And Christopher West doesn't answer that at all. And I don't think there's a good answer for that. So anyway, I hope that made sense. I'm cutting off part of the discussion because of how long this has been going on here, but I just think it's this whole gray area that, and again, as much as Jonah 2.0 would like to give me and Jonah credit for all this, obviously we're not the only ones that find themselves wandering into this gray area of quote unquote other acts. And I think it is the issue that comes pretty much for every Catholic couple, most Catholic couples at some point in time, especially if you're going to use NFP. And I don't think Christopher West has really got an answer for it. He certainly hasn't shared it, and I don't think anyone else does. And I think that's these are my parting thoughts on this. Natural family planning and following these rules is very difficult, but I think it's manageable. And I would say I'm almost going so far as to say it's efficacious and meritorious good for the marriage to have these periods of abstinence from full intercourse without resorting to contraception if the couple has other options available to them, which, as I've said, still represent a cross. It still represents denying yourself what you both probably want, which is the full marital act. And if that is permissible, if couples have some latitude there, I think the church's posture, remaining firm against contraception, becomes much, much more defensible and logical. But without that, I think there's a reason why most people don't even bother trying. And most Catholics don't, right? And so there's a reason for that. And so that's all I want to say. I'm sure I've got all the typical people angry and calling me a heretic or whatever. Fine. Don't take theological advice from me or Jonah. We're just people talking. Go consult with your priest. Go on Reddit. Go listen to all the Christopher West of the world, and you take your moral advice from them, and do what you got to do. But I just think it's important that we talk about the nuances and the other side, so that we can make absolutely sure we're getting this right, and that couples are getting good advice and are doing the most that they can in their marriages to succeed and grow and weather the difficult times. So that's all I wanted to say about that. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Apologize for the length, but I think that was a really, really couple important things to talk about. So I'm going to let you guys go. Hope you all have had a great Thanksgiving and that you have a great Advent coming up. And until next time, everyone, have a good one.